Yeah. We have to wait until we do.
Everyone. Hey, Mr. Jack Snap, officer. I've not had my medication yet, so I'm not gonna be responsible for what comes out of my mouth.
So let's get started on our workshop tonight. The first item on the agenda is a legislative presentation by our communication strategist, Bridget Raper.
I sent the copies of just a real brief description of some of the main bills we were following this year. Have you all had a chance to look at those, or do you have any questions about those without me going through them individually? Yeah.
I saw the email.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Well, because this is a budget session, I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I'll just hit on a couple of the main ones. But I do want to tell you real quick that the first year of the 112th General Assembly ended in May. This year alone, 1,654 bills were filed. 685 of those bills had a potential impact to local government, which meant either positive or negative. Out of those bills, 295 were caption bills. So we didn't know their true intent on some of them up until April. And whenever we start looking at these, I wanted to follow through on some of these that were really hot topics for the cities this year, and some that have really caused some national attention. If the bill is blue, when you look at your sheet, it has blue in here, that means that bill has not, as of Friday, become a public chapter. So the governor has it, has not gone up to him, he has not signed it yet to make it to public chapter. If it's in red and it's got public chapter on top of it, the governor has signed that. And the first bill is one that really doesn't affect us that much, except could have some ramifications. It's where Senator Bell was very honest about it. And he just said he doesn't like it because every time our legislators did a bill and it became law, there was the Chancellor Court in Middle Tennessee that said, this is not legal, and they would kill the bill, they would kill the law. So they formed their own court system. So now we have 3 judges, one from Middle, East, and West Tennessee. And they're going to let them be the ones who decide whether or not that any bill that they pass will become legislative, will become a public chapter, is going to stay if it's challenged by a local government. And a lot of lawsuits have already been filed against this bill. So you'll see this one quite a bit in the news. The other one is right underneath it, it's SB 631, Senator Bell. And I was on the phone with TCMA over this one today and Vernon Girth over in Franklin, which has a lot of really strict design reviews. And this one was trying to preempt local government from being able to do design reviews. And after a long conversation with him and some challenges from some attorneys, I did find out that yes, if you have a design process already in place, then yes, you can still do your design reviews. If there's something that you don't like, you can, as a commission, restrict certain building materials or certain building designs. And as long as your commission approves it, then you have that ability according to this law. So it's a very complicated one for me since I don't deal in this, but according to the attorneys that yes, this wound up being a good bill and TML had a lot to do with making that happen. The only other one that I'd like to bring to your attention, I think we asked if this one was one that was really hot, and you probably got some emails from TML that they put vaping on with the Smoking Act, so you could not vape or smoke in buildings that were owned by the city and county governments, but it didn't restrict it. It took away your ability to restrict it on playgrounds and greenways. And that one passed. It became a public chapter. No, I take that back. It has not become public chapter yet. It has gone to the governor for his signature. But then another bill, SB 28, came in behind it, giving local governments the ability to restrict smoking on any property that you owned, smoking or vaping or anything of that nature. So this one has been signed by the House and Senate speakers. And we're going to watch this one closely to make sure the governor signs it. So you as a city have the ability to say, no, you can't smoke on our playgrounds. Or you can't smoke in our parks or our greenways. So right now, apparently we have no control over that, but this bill will give you that ability.
But we have in our parks now that there's no smoking.
Correct.
So,
And according to our state government, you can't enforce that.
With the new law, you
Yeah.
can't do that.
Pardon?
I just said with the new law, you can't do that.
No. But if this one passes, which I do believe it will, I think the governor will sign it, then you should be fine. I was surprised. I always thought that was just a law. You couldn't smoke in the park. But according to this, no, they can.
That's pretty funny because the county government gave us park benches for all over the town and said there's no smoking on them. So they invested a lot of money in that program
Yes.
to try to make the area.
And according to these bills, that surprised me whenever I saw that.
But that, we had a bill earlier that allowed us to do that. That's the reason the county mayor did that.
Right.
So we're gonna watch that one and make sure this all
We got
goes
some nice
through.
benches.
The last page, you're gonna have one that you wonder, it didn't go, it went into summer study, and it's one that I think caused a lot of people some heartburn. Senator Gartenhire had introduced one about the abatement of fees for stormwater management. And thanks to a lot of people who called and complained about this, had several conversations with Senator Gartenhire. It did get deferred to summer study. We think that will go away. We hope so, because it would put an undue burden on other residential homes to have to pay those fees if this goes through, but they're not anticipating it going through. That's just brief. If you get a chance to look at these and you have questions, please don't hesitate to call me. On another note, Alicia Hodge is having her legislative session. It will be virtual. Reached back out to her again today. I kept watching for it. It has not appeared on INTAS's site, but tomorrow there'll be a link where you go on INTAS on that, is it K@TE? So you can sign up for either June the 15th or the 16th. And those classes, I don't know virtually if it's going to fill up, if there'll be too much to handle, but I would encourage you to go ahead and sign up quickly, because she does a really good job. It's very long and intensive, but you'll get a better understanding of what happened this year in the legislative session.
Is that it? Thank you. Chris, will you turn the lights off over just the screen, please? All right. Thank you. So on to the fun stuff. We're pleased to present to you the proposed budget 2021 request for the city. As you know, the city consists of five different funds: the general fund, technology fund, sewer, airport, and drug funds. We're broken up into property tax at approximately 5.69, other taxes at approximately 1.3, sales tax at 3.57, grants at about 205,000, and the miscellaneous at about 1.67 million. Gives us a total general fund of approximately 12.5 million. And this year, property tax, 1 cent of property tax has increased to 34,485. I believe last year it was 33,007 something, in that neighborhood. Yes, so a little bit more. If I get going quick, just slow me down.
We will.
So these are the projected revenues this year. The property tax currently, as you know, we're doing a reassessment. This budget is based on a temporary $1.65 holding the rate. Once we find out exactly where revenues come in and the reassessment comes in, we'll have a subsequent conversation a little bit later about the rate. Utility tax, so that'll yield us approximately 5.69. Utility tax, 188,000. That's a bump up based on projections this year. Local sales tax, 2.7. If you remember last year, and correctly so, sales taxes and the like were reduced 20% to hedge for COVID. Based on this year's projections, we can come back up. It was the exact correct thing to do last year. However, based on this year's projections, this is where we are. Mixed drink tax is back up to 13,000. It shows as a large percentage increase, but it's based on a small number, so it's a little bit deceiving. 9% increase in business tax, again, based on this year's projections. Telephone franchise tax is going up to 6,000. It shows it's 13% against based on a small number. Cable franchise, hotel, motel, and building permits are down. One of the reasons why building permits are down so far is we had a significant number of permits pulled, both for the McKee Plant 5 expansion was a very large amount. Andrew, do you remember off the top of your head about how much that permit was?
It was a pretty substantial amount, but that was for Plant 5 Phase 1 edition. We have not yet got the permit issued for Phase 2, and that's going to be
That'll be
a pretty substantial amount. And from the last conversation I had, I think they're anticipating it's going to be after July 1. But I didn't want to falsely include it if it came in this current fiscal year.
And we also had the Barnsley Park, the bulk of their build out, which Wellesley will start coming online towards the end of this fiscal year. But between those two items is why we're showing the 23% decrease. And then the economic development fees staying flat. We're showing a pretty big decrease in grant revenue this year. We just don't expect to have that many grants coming in this year. Pretty good increase in state sales tax. Again, half of that was the hedge last year on the COVID that we did not see. And then this number is a projection based on this year's income. And then state income tax, this is the last year of the hall tax. And we used 35% of this year's hall tax instead of 50%. So this is a conservative number, but the reason why it shows that increase is because last year we just projected $100. And we expect it to be more than the 142,000 shown, but we want to be a little more accurate. And then the state beer tax is, again, based on what we're seeing this year. Moving into gas tax, this is a projection, again, based on this year's. It's about 4% on top of the 20% that was reduced last year. Inspection fees right there at 19%. The TVA is a projection based on where we are. The police supplemental pay, that number is based on what we're actually seeing, plus the proposed addition of 2 officers. The coalition funds are flat. Refuse collection contract is flat. Decrease in the library expenditures, about 1/3. City court and fines, that's based on what we're seeing this year. Interest earnings, again, that's a projection on what we're seeing this year. We're in a very great situation that we have a significant amount of cash on hand, so we're getting some interest off of it. Then sale of surplus property, we're showing it down at $10,000. That's speculative, as you know. We sold a fair amount of property this year. We expect to sell a fair amount more next year. So that number will true up later in the year. And then we have the standard $1,000 donation because we do not know how much that's going to be. Sewer fund is $15,000. That's what we charge ourselves for the admin side of handling sewer. Miscellaneous revenues is again based on this year's projections. And then we have a $1 million transfer from fund balance. So in total, we're projecting a 17% increase in general fund revenues, going from 10.6-ish million to 12.46 million. And this is expenditure breakdown. Total expenditures, we're projecting approximately 12.36-ish million. 382,000 in planning, 184 municipal court, 891 admin, 633 building and codes, 4.7 general government, 2.5 in police, 2.86 in public works, and 173-ish in parks and rec. All right, legislative expenditure is flat this year, $2,100. That's for y'all. Municipal court expenditures, we are showing a 9% increase in salaries. That includes this year's raise and moving our retention incentive into salaries. So in years past, we had to journal or ledger, journal entry, an add and deduct for the retention incentive. So we'd have to show it coming in and going out. So to simplify things, we've moved it to salaries. It just makes it easier. So it does kind of falsely show an increase in salaries that instead of it being those 2 different line items. We left overtime flat. OASI, that's our insurance. It went up 7%, whereas salaries went up 9%. The reason for the lag, and you'll see that consistently this evening, is the retention incentive already had insurance included in the number, whereas salaries did not. So there'll just be a slight lag between the two on a percentage basis. So the judge bumped 5%, that's the standard. And then we dropped other operating supplies down to $1,300 even, so $73 difference, but that's why it shows that little 5% change. So it's a approximately 8% increase.
How many employees are in this salary group?
I mean,
3.
Can I ask a quick question back on the income? On our sales tax that we get every year, how does the tax-free weekends that the governor is asking for, can we predict about how much they will affect us?
Not really, especially with COVID right now, the numbers are all over the place. As one of our initiatives later in the year is going to be analyzing the gross sales and the tax sales from back to school as part of some of our ongoing efforts to try to, the word's not predict, but get a decent feel for how point of sale taxing will be affecting us in the future. So we'll be doing a more in-depth analysis in the fall.
More of a projection?
Yeah, more of a projection. And so we can ask Kelly to analyze that too with that data and get a better number for you.
Thank you.
Did I answer it completely?
Well, as much as you could, I guess.
The answer is I don't know for sure right now.
I just know they've been discussing another one here even before the school.
Mhm.
The one that's usually in October, November, or September, August. Okay.
Okay. Election expenditure, we zeroed out. We will have a special election this year. We do not know if it will be in Collegedale or not. At this point, there's talk and we're still waiting. Commissioner White, do you know when the governor will announce his final plans? I believe it's 30 days from last week.
It'll be sometime this week, I think.
Okay. So later this week, we should get a more firm plan on where and when the election's held. We may need to revise that based on
What's the district?
unless they do it there.
Well, when they do it here, they don't.
Okay.
they don't charge us. It's only if one of our commissioners. That's
Okay.
a new thing the last 5 years.
Okay. So then we'll
It
leave it
shouldn't
at 0.
be, it shouldn't have.
Right. So admin, we are showing a pretty significant increase for salaries for admin. Some of that is general raises. We're adding half of a staff engineer, an IT support person. So last year we didn't do any raises, again, as part of our planning for COVID. This year we're proposing a 5.31% across the board cost of living adjustment. And then we have analyzed further specific positions that are off of market rate. So right now, we are 78-ish% below market rate on employees. The 5.31% dropped that to 56%. We have then gone back and position by position, analyzed it further and added a little bit more. A lot of that is going into PD, Public Works, airport and planning, as they were outliers, and we've dropped that down to around 38%. They're still below market rate. We will never be at 100% at market rate because employees are gaining experience over time. They're on improvement plans, et cetera. But we would like to get that number down into the teens on market rate, and this year's a big step towards that. This also includes the retirement package for the previous city manager. And then, again, we have go ahead. We have the lag on OASI because we also rolled the retention incentives up again. Fuel, this is for the proposed vehicle. The equipment lease is flat, and then we have the proposed vehicle purchase this year. That would be a one-off. So that'll yield approximately 39% increase.
That excuse me, last year we were given a list of the employees and what their salaries were. Could we get that to the commissioners this year too?
Sure.
Thanks.
You want the proposed, I assume,
Yeah, what's included in this budget
by position?
by position?
So could you add current salary, future salary, or is?
Yeah, we've got all that, so we get whatever you want. So you want current and then proposed.
The projected.
I
Okay.
think that's what we got last time. when we
Yeah.
projected to it.
We got all of that plus what their benefits were.
So in previous years, the city manager kept us at the minimum salary, even though we did all these budget studies.
That
So
was
we
his
would
approach.
never reach market value at,
Correct. That was his approach, was to do the study to verify that all positions were at the minimum for the role, not necessarily market. And as you know, right now, there is a tremendous amount of demand for good employees. And so we believe it's appropriate to push towards market.
So this will bring us up, how far did you say?
38% will still be under market, approximately. And again, we'll probably never get everyone to market just due to career growth and that sort of thing. But it's a big chunk of the way there.
2 years forward.
Right.
So the 38%, there's no one 38% below market value.
38% of employees are below market value.
Oh, okay.
We have corrected some of those outliers. We did have some employees that were in the low 20s, below market.
because I know last year, we brought some people up considerable amount of increase.
The year before, we did a 6% cost of living, and then the people that 6% did not bring to minimum, they were then brought to minimum.
So what's the area that you study to find out what market value is in?
I think
U.S. Department of Wage and Labor for the annual growth, and then we had the salary study 2 years ago that set the minimum market and maximum rates by position.
So this is a national survey you're using?
So the year-over-year increase is the national survey. The base study was one performed for us. I don't remember the name of the company. Okay, but that was the one that we did 2 years ago for us for positions here in Chattanooga. And then we just used the USDL numbers for the growth since then, rather than do another study.
Okay, so then last year, they didn't even get a raise. This is 2 years ago.
Correct.
So what I'd like to work towards is that there's been times when they've not got raises and they've performed excellent jobs, is that if this gets closer to it, and then if they have if it's a small amount of cost of living raise, a year, whatever, because, things do go up every year.
Mhm.
To get us more on target where they should be, not just the minimum.
Correct. And the 5.31% was based on 2 years ago, wage growth was 2.9%, and this year it's 2.3%, 3.1. And that's how we got that number.
So you're looking at 5.31, you said?
5.31 or 2.41 and 2.9. So 2 years ago, I know it was 2.9. The remainder was this year's.
I mean, I've never heard of anybody in this region using a national norm to determine salaries or pay scale for this area.
It's
Because
general
of
wage
cost of
growth.
living. I'm sorry.
General wage growth. The base market analysis was performed for us in this region 2 years ago. But those numbers are 2 years old, so we then used the national wage growth numbers to project.
So we don't have anything current from this area. You're projecting from a national. That's what I hear you say?
The growth rate is national, but it's based on a local study.
it's just 2 years old.
It's just 2 years old, and the expense of doing a local study again, it was almost $10,000. To find out that we're at 76 versus 82% under market. I mean, the answer is the same. We're far enough off. In the future, once we get closer, it would be appropriate to do another local study. But right now, we felt like this approach was the best usage of funds to get closer to our goal. All right, moving on to planning. So salaries bumped up 21%. Again, that planning was an outlier, plus we rolled the retention incentives up. That's also why the OSI continues to lag. Overtime stayed flat. Business and lobbying stayed flat. College of Tomorrow Foundation bumped from 75 to 100. That's based on the revised memorandum of understanding for them taking over the maintenance of the park. And then the proposed development code revision is actually a windfall that we received this year. And so we would like to use that money to update our development code to move towards more current development practices and standards. Our code is 10 years old, which was based on 10-year-old data at the time, probably. And it focuses significantly on big box retail and suburban type growth. Current market is moving away from that commercial to more higher density residential. And so we believe it'd be appropriate to go ahead and update the code to reflect the current market.
How many employees are in this salary bracket?
3,
3 full-time?
yes.
Where is Brittany's salary?
In here.
In this one?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we lost the,
That's too much. No, okay.
While she's doing that, how many are in the salary for the administration?
I don't know that one off the top of my head.
It will be broken out with what you get tomorrow from Kristen. It's off the top of my head.
Okay, so we'll know when that comes, what category they go in.
You'll get
Okay,
what category.
That's fine.
And that includes the proposed positions as well, the IT specialist and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Now with the IT specialist, we've put in a budget with an OSI number. We are investigating staff aug rather than direct hire. That's what they're doing in Chattanooga that Chief Sapp's wife oversees. And that might yield some opportunities for us to get a better fit person at flat or less money. So the total for planning economic development is a 52% increase. However, more than half of that is that one-off development code revision. Building and codes. So this is, we're bumping from 207 to 248.8 for salaries. That is the raises that we talked about earlier, plus we're requesting to take one of our part-time janitorial folks to full-time. Overtime staying flat. OSI, again, lags, but it bumps commensurate with pay and staffing. Janitorial supplies are flat. Utilities are bumping up 23%. Some of that is a projection based on the park and the commons taking over those utilities and where we are this year. We are bumping a little bit on telephone and cell phone services and are going to investigate some possible cost-saving alternatives later in the year when we get a little more information. Inspection and code enforcement's bumping up. It's a big percentage, but it's $3,300, so it's kind of deceiving. Fuel's up 21%. That's just based on the futures market and fuel going up. Vehicle parts and repairs, based on kind of where we are this year, older vehicles and rounding. Again, it's a $1,400 increase, but shows that 41% increase. Building repair and maintenance is going down pretty significantly. We don't have any major building maintenance projects scheduled outside of the ones that we moved to capital. And so those that we do have planned is an update, City Hall interior. As you know, we did some work this year. This is continuation of that. That's the painting, the blinds, the light changing, that sort of thing. Smart system HVAC for City Hall and the library. Building automation system front-end cost. We have a line item for the Little Debbie security cameras. We will also investigate that harder once we get the pavilion built. We may have an opportunity for some cost savings, moving in a slightly different camera style. And then we have 11.5 for repairs outside of the library.
And this is all under the capital improvement or
Correct.
outlay?
Correct.
What's the spending limit to be a capital outlay? Is there,
It's usually we put everything above 10,000, it needs to be bid, usually.
So each of these items, will come back to the commission, minus the smart system HVACs. Unless they get too terribly close, we'll bring them to you. But both of those should stay under, we won't need to, and the automation system, but the remainder will need to come back to you.
so we really have no way to estimate the utilities for the new park.
It was
Is it?
a little tighter than that,
Okay.
but it wasn't much. We had to look at what we were spending at the Commons. The biggest outlier for the new park is water. And that one really was, best guess. It'll depend on how dry the year is and how much water we use for irrigation.
Is, what about for the new community center? Is that included in this number as well?
The new community center, the pavilion. Oh, the annex. Yes, that was included in these. Well, it was a guess. It was a thought out guess, but it's a guess.
Okay.
But that is a lot of why these utility numbers are up, is rolling those two over to us. So, go ahead.
And on the cell phones, I think I've asked this before, but who doesn't have a cell phone with the city?
Part-time people and Ashley and Christy.
What's the criteria? And you don't have to answer today, but could you send us?
It's considered a benefit if you're a full-time
Not
employee.
all police have cell phones either, just certain ones in the past. The chief identified to me that they need to have a cell phone, but not all police have, not all public works, or most public works do, but not all maybe. Yeah.
Could you send us a criteria who, I'm just curious, the number continues to go up and up and up.
Yes. And we are looking into, Commissioner White actually mentioned there's a program through AT&T and the federal government that would allow that number to come down significantly, but we still need to look into it to get those details.
Do we use any kind of solar for the lights in the park?
No. The only lights in the park are the street lamps.
Okay. Just seems like to me that if there's certain lightings within the park itself, that we could figure out some kind of solar with that, like I see along on the T-Dot and other places.
Yeah.
That would save us some electricity perhaps.
Mayor, I just wanted to add, one thing we are phasing in and gravitating towards, you can see in the restroom, we've already gone to LED flat panel lights.
Mhm.
Courtroom here, hopefully later this week, is going to go that direction. We wanted to transition to that. Also in the parking lot, eventually here, commons and other areas, because LED just is the technology. It uses a lot less electricity, and the frequency of bulb changing goes down substantially as well. So that's one thing that we should experience a decent amount of cost savings as well.
Okay.
Also, by sticking with the EPB standard street light, they maintain the light as part of a 20-year plant agreement. So that cost includes some of the maintenance.
Okay.
So, other government expenditures, again, we zeroed out the retention and incentive plan, rolled that into salaries. Benefit and consulting fees went down a little bit. Let me get to my next page. HRA, we bumped that up. That number actually reflects what we're spending. The 95 was significantly low. The 300 is much more accurate. We're going to 16.5 on long-term disability, just a projection. Medical insurance, this is with the increase in employees and the annual increase that we always see in medical. Retirement bumps up. Again, that's a reflection of number of employees and cost each year. Life insurance is up just a little bit. That 11% is a little bit deceiving. It's a little less than $400. We're flat on unemployment taxes, flat on training. Training and education does include travel expenses, hotels, per diem, et cetera. So that's not just the cost of classes. I think across the staff, Michelle and Ashlyn both have to do 24 hours a year in continuing ed. I have to do 12. Kelly probably does 12.
To about 18.
Okay, 18. Andrew, I wouldn't even wager a guess.
36 every 3 years.
Okay. Eric, you have a bunch.
Theirs just dropped to 16 hours a year.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't even know.
they just passed that
Yes.
this year.
Another bill.
Yeah. And that was a good sign or?
And there was one that they weren't gonna, you didn't have to pay for anymore.
They didn't.
They didn't do that one?
They took it down.
So last year, sorry, are you finished with that one?
Yeah, that's fine.
So last year, we had 95,000 in the HRA. What do we have, do you remember what we were the year before?
Well, when we switched insurance, the insurance cost overall, the line item 142, went down and the HRA went up. Well, we really didn't reflect that in the HRA. I think we kept it static at 95, and we should have done that. That, you know, it needed to be brought up as the insurance went down.
So how much does each employee get for this, for their deductible and co-insurance amount?
So it's, I think.
Because it's to
they're-
offset their deductibles, right?
It offsets the deductible. So our deductible is,
2,500 and it drops to 250.
yeah,
And then the copay is what?
yeah, it's 4,000.
Oh.
4,000 per family.
Per family. Yeah.
4,000 per family, and I think 2,500 for single, it drops to 250 to 500. So the difference is what the city makes up.
Does any of this affect the copay?
No.
None?
No, the copays remain the same.
Oh, yeah, there's that.
And if that money is not used by every employee, that remains correct. So it may be budgeted, but if all of that is not used by the employees during a calendar year, that money still remains correct. How does that?
This is just an estimate of what has been used.
Right,
So, yeah, we don't even predict all of it.
right.
We don't budget for all of it.
It's not like an HSA where you get to keep the money in the savings.
Right, the employees don't, but
Yeah.
the city's expenditure may not, the obligation is there, but the actual expenditure may not reach that. It was my question.
No, it will probably reach that. We
Right.
don't put in as if everybody uses all of it.
Okay.
We just do that would be outrageous. So we just do what.
What's
we
typical
usually use.
utilization?
Yeah,
That's based on this year's spend. That's where we expect to be.
yeah.
All right, where were we? Then library funding went up 3%, and then local option sales tax commission went up 20.
Did they raise how much they charge us to collect it?
No, it's just because we raised the sales tax 20%, that's what.
Yeah, it's a lag.
I was gonna say, his office doesn't talk,
Yeah,
his office doesn't require that much work
All right, oops, flip one.
from us.
All right. I think I lost my page.
Consulting services, 41990.
So pensions, yeah, that's what I thought. I just lost my notes here. No, because I'm in PD. Okay, yeah, we're good. All right, so consulting services went up a little bit. A lot of that is inspection help, as we're doing some of this growth. We will need some inspection help. We left the city attorney flat, postage flat, We decreased advertising in newsletters a little bit. Again, the percentage is a little misleading. And then we left the remainder flat, minus property tax commission, but the dues and memberships, recreation holiday programs, legal services, retainer, accounting and auditing, and the Humane Society are all flat. We have a 2% increase in the property tax commission. There we go.
That's,
Pardon?
That's what they charge us to collect it, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And there's a slight increase or projected increase in revenue, so.
the 2%? The 2%?
Correct. All right. So we dropped hotel motel tax, $21. Computer support, we bumped up 12% based on what we're actually spending. We left bank and credit card fees and coffee machine supplies flat. Office supplies, we projected a little closer to what we're actually spending. So then safety, we bumped up a little bit. We're making a push to buy safety boots for everyone that ends up in the field this year. That's most of what you see there. Then insurance went down 4%. That's just a closer projection on where we are. So in general government, we're expecting about a 14% increase in expenditures.
What's the difference in the hotel motel tax on this page versus under the general fund of 92,000?
Under the general fund revenues, that's the revenue. This is the 1% that they charge.
Okay,
Cost
They
to collect.
collect for property tax.
just like
sales
property,
tax.
okay. Thank you.
So PD, salaries bumped 14%. We are requesting 2 more patrol officers. We also had the raises this year and rolled the retention incentive in. We left overtime flat, OASI.
So what is, excuse me, so what does 2 more patrol officers take our total to?
Will take us to 26.
26?
Yes, sir.
So when you remember MTAS a couple years ago said we could use about 5 more. So this is a step in that direction. We have also reorged the special operations. They've moved to patrol at this time to fill the gap. And that was 2 officers at that time, plus the interim lieutenant also came out of special ops.
Is that the 2.3% and they recommended we go to 2.5% per 1,000 officers or something like that?
Whatever percent it was. I just remember that they said 5. I don't remember.
I don't remember the percent, but I remember them saying that would be equivalent to 5 additional people.
So,
It was a per 1,000,
Yeah.
2.3 officers per 1,000 and increase it to 2.5 per 1,000.
I can't swear to you on the percentages, but it resulted in the 5, and that was the data point in the 2, plus moving the special operations folks over, which was 3.
And that was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, before Barnsley Park and the new apartments were built. So population has increased as well since that recommendation.
Correct.
Okay.
And that was before the current census numbers come out too, which will show some growth.
I think I see another 500 apartments going in too, aren't there?
There's more coming in.
It's, how many is it? 212 or 188? It's right around 200. We went back and forth one building, I don't know how many times.
On the North American property,
Correct.
that's a little under 200,
Okay.
and that's the last they can build there,
Mhm.
fortunately. And I say that just because we're looking for some other uses there.
And then we also have the new one going up
Right.
here off Epsom Pike.
Yeah.
Correct. That'll be 101 units. Barnsley is approximately 100 of the 130 so built out. And then there's
136 that build out will be the total.
And then there's 44 or 42 homes and 44 lots in the last phase of Wellesley that's currently under construction.
Back in the back. Yeah.
So right up here, where you're talking about the northwest of Appleton, you know, at one time when it first came to us, because it's been several years ago, there was going to be apartments and then at the bottom, there was going to be like a 17-unit plaza type retail thing. Has that been omitted now or no more than?
The best way to answer that, Commissioner Baker, is that, and it probably will involve another discussion, but the current market does not support the original plan that Mr. Medwick had for that property. The days of the big box are past us.
Mhm.
I think we were told at one time that at least 150 acres would be the next Hamilton Place. Well, Hamilton Place is barely hanging on, so that's going to take a very serious discussion with staff and the commission that commercial development in retail is not going to be the answer going forward in the sense that it appeared to be 10 years ago, even 5 years ago.
I think more of the growth now has been a market of the smaller hometown type businesses, encouraging that from what I've seen in areas. And I know Dalton, that's what they've done to regenerate their downtown area. It's mostly family-owned type small businesses and specialty shops.
Right, you need a critical mass for that,
Mhm.
and we're lacking that around Four Corners for a number of reasons. There are a lot of headwinds on that.
Yeah.
So that's why we're not looking at additional massive commercial development there. Not saying that it can't happen,
It's just
but
not
the
feasible
scale
at
that
this
was
time.
originally envisioned, that may be altered.
Okay.
And that's out of our hands. That's going to be in the hands of the market and the developer.
It seems like, I know it's not really close to the interstate, but hotels are all full all the time, man. Seems like that might be a good option there with a restaurant or two, because they certainly seem to do well everywhere in this United States. Anyway, that's not for discussion tonight, but yeah, those apartments up there sure are hid well. I mean,
And
I
we'll
just
be
drove
getting-
up that road and all of a sudden last weekend, hadn't heard a word about them, didn't know anything about them.
They'll have additional
And here's
landscaping
200
too.
Here's 200 apartments going in. I said, that's interesting. They have what, did you say?
The additional, once the landscaping is installed on the other side of Absent Pike on the north side, that will even be more hidden because it's up at an elevation like the other one is. So both of them should eventually be tucked away.
Yeah, and the one on the north side is homes, basically. That's a nice thing about that. Very different from what's 3-story over here.
Training and education bumped. This is reflective of the 2 new officers, that we have a lot of young officers, et cetera. Dues and memberships bumped. This is a more accurate projection of what we're actually spending. Repair and maintenance bumped. Again, just more accurate representation of what we're spending. Records management bumped. This includes our quartermaster software that you've proposed, which is essentially inventory management of everything that we issue to the police officers. Currently, we don't have a good inventory anywhere. So we're moving to a quartermaster software that will track guns, vests, radios, et cetera.
Well, what have we done in the past about doing inventory, keeping track of everything? Hit and miss?
It's been hit and miss, it's been various Excel files for different people. There's been really no structured, consistent way of tracking it. So the initial startup fee for the software is $9,700, it'll then drop. It goes down to $5,000 a year, but that'll allow us to track all the physical equipment assets as well as part of the software is for vehicle fleet, where you can track maintenance that's done, those inform how much when it's done.
To be more accurate,
Much more accurate.
much more accurate, so we get a better.
Also allow me to be able to generate reports with the commissioner or whoever what vehicles we're seeing issues with, if any, what's being spent. It's just a much better way to track citizens and the city's assets on what's going out and what's coming back in.
So how long does it take in order to get this installed? Let's say like the budget goes through and everything, and to get this type of equipment that you're talking about, the software package, to have it installed and get it up and running? What time frame?
Once it's purchased, and then it's just a matter of getting installed, and then they do a 2-hour kind of online training for those that will be using it, and then it'll be a little bit of a process because we'll have to basically go in and inventory everything from scratch, so to speak. So it'll take a little time, but then once we get caught up to where we need to be, then it'll be every time something inside comes in, track the software. And
Okay.
the same way with the fleet.
Okay.
And my question is, do we have somebody that can go in there and do the tracking, entering the data So we don't have our officer sitting in an office doing that.
Currently, that's part of one of the responsibilities of Sergeant Booth in his administrative functions. He's doing that now as best he can, but he's tracking it again just on his sales spreadsheets. But that is something that he has been doing since he started that position, and it'll just fall in line with that.
And that was his promotion 6 weeks ago to the administrative.
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
So the dispatch contract went down $2,000. We reduced funding to sort down to 12. Equipment and supplies, we optimized down to 36,450. K-9, that's the $500 annual for the one remaining retired officer. And then clothing and uniforms, we more accurately projected, which was down about 7%.
So we giving up on a K-9 unit, or we still have that in the back of our mind, or we just,
This year's budget request does not include a K-9.
I understand that. I mean, I just asking if there was any interest in the future.
There is interest in the future. This year, our request was for the additional officers, not the officers and the K-9 and all that entails.
Okay, so we're looking at finding someone, maybe one of the officers that might be interested in being K-9, an officer or something.
Yes,
Down the
ma'am.
road.
There's no doubt that we have probably a handful of officers that would be interested in being K-9 handler.
I would like to see that come back up, if it's feasible. And I understand the budget for this year, and we're making that transition, but in the future, I'd like to see a K-9 officer with a little K-9.
Okay.
The
So-
challenge I see with it is you lose a lot of officer on the street time for training. Isn't there quite a bit of training they have to do outside their normal patrol?
There is quite a bit of training that's accurate, and that's why most agencies, they have very specific K-9s, just largely do K-9 work, because it is kind of challenging if you have, which is one of the difficulties, quite honestly, that we ran into the previous half of this year, is when they're splitting a dual role of patrol expectations and K-9, it can be difficult to get in the hourly requirements each month.
And the only reason I say that, I think when we decide we're going to do that again, we look at taking that officer out of patrol and do
Just K-9.
what Jack just described.
Right. And that would be part of that larger conversation. There'd be several conversations about housing the K-9, veterinary care, et cetera, that I think Chief Sapp and I would both like to have much more defined in the future before expanding that program.
What is the usual size of a department that would also have a K-9? I mean, are we a large enough town that we would need a K-9?
A K-9 would certainly be beneficial for a department our size. I mean, there's certainly probably smaller agencies that have K-9s, maybe have more than one K-9. The effectiveness of the K-9 program largely depends on the handler and how they're selected. If they are a working and very active K-9 unit, then that is very beneficial, especially if they're doing not only just K-9 or dog sniffs or narcotics or interdiction stops, but also community relations in schools. They've seen them dual purpose dogs. So certainly an agency our size, it's not beyond the norm at all that have at least one K-9.
I can kind of agree with the vice mayor. I would like to see the handler be well-trained, just from previous experiences to myself. I would like to make sure that that's what they can focus on, get the training that they need, and it not take away from patrol or whatever. So, but I am all for a K-9.
Okay.
So.
And as the city manager pointed out, part of our discussions has been increasing our numbers in the patrol division. When the special operations group was started, it actually full officers. So we had basically had discussions, and I pulled those three back, put them back into patrol, and then the addition of 2 more would also go into patrol. And so that essentially gives us 1 more officer per shift on the streets as opposed to assigned to a specialty unit, which again, this will help with response time, so visibility, call it, and all of
Yeah, because I like the aspect of the visibility, because I know in times past, I really didn't recognize it until the COVID, that I had to work from home quite a bit, and where I was used to seeing patrolmen out in the neighborhoods and in the surrounding neighborhoods like 3 times a day each. That's when they had the 3 shifts that they would patrol, and then I saw that they were only coming in maybe once within a 24-hour span. And I like to see them out there, because it is good for the community to see that our officers are visible, but also building up that, the community. You know, the kids love seeing the policemen come through and talking with them and playing basketball or whatever. If it's just for a few seconds, just say, hey, how you doing? Building that rapport, you know, because that helps keep your city safe.
I think one of the advantages of having a K-9 is probably nothing you can really put a dollar value on. But I know that we've had our K-9 handlers go over to the school systems, and it has truly been a success, and I appreciate the police department for doing that. A lot of positive comments over the years.
Yes, and I've had them come to the schools that I've been involved in and have programs with the kids and so forth. So I think that's a good something to look forward to.
So we had a slight bump, 3% on other operating supplies. Again, 20% bump on vehicle fuel based on the futures market. Vehicle parts and repairs is up 28%. Almost all of that $12,000 is to repurpose the sort transport vehicle into a disaster response vehicle. So that's light bars, emergency response for things like the tornado, rather than strictly transporting officers in a SORT situation. We had a $100 increase for the motorcycle fuel, 7% decrease in CIC computer rental, a slight 3% increase in public relations, and then the capital outlay is $254,857. The bulk of that is 5 vehicles. 2 go for the new officers that we are requesting. Mobile CAD is $32,000 of that, and then we have $20,000 for updates out at the firing range and the shooting house. Can you speak to mobile CAD?
Yeah, currently, we are one of the only agencies in Hamilton County that doesn't have computer-aided dispatcher CAD in our patrol vehicles. Sheriff's Office, Chattanooga, basically everybody other than us, and maybe Lookout Mountain currently doesn't offer that to our officers. It's an initial fee of what we budgeted for. Then after that, it drops to a couple $100 a year for maintenance and upkeep. But basically, it provides officers with all the information that the dispatcher sees. The officers can input information from their car to the computer. They can initiate, self-initiate if they stop in a neighborhood. They don't have to follow the dispatcher. They can type it in, the dispatcher can see it. Message capabilities from the dispatch center to the officers. So currently what we have is it's an app-based that officers have on their phone, but it doesn't do nearly anything the mobile CAD will do. It also has GPS mapping software that the dispatchers can see the officers can see each other agencies, the sheriff's office can see where our guys are, or we can see where they are in certain situations. So it's something that the officers have been asking for a while. We've actually got 4 or 5 kind of trial licenses right now. Feedback has been great from the officers, and it'll be a great tool, great asset.
So all total, that gives us a total ask of approximately $2.5 million, with the bulk of that being one-off expenses, such as the vehicles, the mobile CAD, the repurposing of the sort truck, and that sort of thing.
So before you turn the page, I know you're quickly trying to get over that page. So the 5 Dodge Durangos, it gives me a little heartburn.
Okay.
We have got a ton of vehicles. I know we're trying to sell some of them. I found out a couple weeks ago when you provided a report to me that there was like 2 motorcycles that we still had that should have been sold 3 or 4 years ago when we replaced them. Where are we on those? Are they on gut deals? Have we gotten rid of them? Because I have a hard time with 5 Durangos if we haven't got rid of them, because the parking lot back there is full.
Well, Most of those cars in the back are loan cars, and they're high mileage cars, they also utilize by the reserve division. The new vehicles, once we roll those down and get those distributed, then everything rolls down, and then we'll be surplusing more vehicles. Part of the thing with these high mileage line cars is, officers' vehicles frontline for routine service, general just repair, they go down, they need to move into a line car. If you get into some of these line cars with 150, 175,000 miles, they don't run properly, we're constantly maintenance fees to keep them up and running. So everything will roll down. As far as where we're at, we are in the process of surplusing. Some of those vehicles have sat so long that they just wouldn't start, and we had to invest a little money in batteries, to do a little bit to clean them up, to make them sellable. What we're trying to accomplish is selling them as is to other police agencies that might need them or want them, to prevent us from having to spend a lot of expense, manpower hours, and stripping out lights and cameras and that sort of thing. So most of the equipment that's in those vehicles is outdated. What we felt would be able to keep and utilize future cars or current cars we've taken out. And so they're in the process of being posted and being sold on government.
So how are the Durangos handling or holding up?
The Durangos are fine. I checked with our mechanics a while back. They report no significant issues, no major issues. Problems that are duplicating up that is just normal, which you would expect to see on police
They're brand
vehicles.
new.
I talked to other agencies that run Explorers, and the feedback from them is generally that they don't like them. Now that they've got them, the officers generally don't like them, for various reasons. The ones that we're currently running, the officers love them. They're all asking for Durangos, and it provides more equipment for all the additional stuff that we have to carry nowadays, especially when we have officers in multiple roles. Some of them carry additional medical equipment, AEDs, some of them are carrying the sword equipment. So the feedback has been phenomenal. They've been running great, and there haven't been any issues.
I think outside of normal maintenance, the only item that I can think of was a water pump went out.
Yeah, we had one more.
So are we still short the 2020 Durango that we've ordered? Did that ever come in?
We have it. It's currently at the install shop. Get the equipment installed.
It's been
That
there.
was for Ben Parker, is that what it was?
Yes, sir.
It's been there like 3 weeks,
That sounds right. It's been there.
give or take.
Install shop, and they were waiting on some equipment that hadn't come in yet.
So how much do you think you're gonna get for these extra vehicles and motorcycles to offset this 202,857?
Off the cuff, Commissioner, it's really hard for me to tell you because it's just going to depend on what kind of shape they're in and who wants to buy it, who needs it. Maybe after I can kind of see what these first ones are getting ready to do, because I'm getting ready to probably ask to surplus 2 or 3 more here pretty soon. And then I can probably give you a more accurate number on what they're going for and what we can expect to get out of it. It's like some of them have sat so long that they won't even run, and I don't think it's cost effective to spend a bunch of money to try to replace parts or get them running. So we're trying to kind of sell them as is, and the rest of it we can clean up and get running well.
What are you hoping to get out of maybe? Best estimation, what you hope? We know it depends on, the buyer's market and what actually is there that they can purchase that might be feasible.
Well, I mean, again, I'm not a car guy, I'm not sitting here being able to predict what we're gonna get for this mileage car versus this mileage. And again, some of them have mechanical issues that we'll have to just be open and honest with, that, we have one today that, if it was out of the range and it won't even start, so, it was gonna cost $800 probably to get that one running, and we may get $1,000 or so out of it, so we're just selling it. So I could probably give you a better answer once I look at, what we're taking out, and then as we start getting offers.
How many cars are we looking to get rid of?
Right now, we just got rid of 5, I think.
5 was the first ask. We had 2 more parts cars that were not part of that ask. And then we have a K9 unit that we were going to repurpose, which would have freed one up.
One K9 unit we're repurposing and bringing back. And then I probably got, just off the cuff, for probably 2 or 3 more in the near future. And then as we get in, if we can get these new ones, then that's another 3 or 4 or 5 more there.
So that's not counting the motorcycles, though, the 2 motorcycles.
The 2 motorcycles were in the initial ask.
Initial, okay.
And my understanding is one has a knock in the motor and the other one seems to be mechanically sound.
That's correct. And some of the unmarked vehicles as well, city manager and I talked about repurposing potentially to other departments within the city.
Yep.
Or potentially destriping some of that's an option and utilizing the developer.
We're trying to get it down to reasonable.
Have we looked into leasing options versus owning?
We're actually in a long and very complicated debate right now with the auditors over leasing, and they're not encouraging.
We used to lease them.
A year under leases, so that they just, 1 year.
We used to lease them.
Yeah.
And then we decided to not to lease them, just go straight purchase.
So once we, in the future, in years in the future, and once we get hard answers from the auditors on this change in the leasing approach, that will be on the table. Right now, we don't have good information to go that route. And like I said, the auditors are pushing back on leases right now.
So I'm not opposed, but I remember a couple of years ago when we had a tax increase and we bought 8 police cars, did not do for well.
Right.
And I thought that brought our fleet up to where we really needed to be, from the way I understood it. So,
I think we've added a few policemen since then, have we not, in a few years?
but we've added police cars for them, haven't we?
I don't think we've added any since then.
I don't think we have.
We've had new hires to replace leaving hires since
Okay,
then.
that's maybe where.
And we typically, we're looking at 4 to 5 years, typical lifespan on a police car. And I think the year you're talking about was 3 to 4 years ago. So we're basically at that point that some of those vehicles will start rolling into line vehicles and they'll need to be replaced. So, any other questions? Fire protection, bump 3%. That's pretty much standard. All right. Public Works. So we're showing a 26% bump on salary. We're asking to add 1 level 1 laborer whose purpose will be mainly beautification and assistance as needed. We're asking to roll Jamie full-time and go that way. So then we're flat on overtime, OSI, again, lags. We're flat on street lighting, 15% on clothing and uniforms, reflective of simple cost adjustment and the additional employees. We're down 5% on landscaping supplies. We're flat on operating supplies, down 5% on vehicle fuel. We're up on vehicle parts and repairs. We are up on ADA repairs, 52%. I believe some of that's rolling over from unspent monies this year and some additional projects in the pipeline for next year. And then we are flat on other repairs, maintenance, sign parts and supplies, safety supplies. Then we're flat on road repair. We are down significantly on roads and streets resurfacing. Prospect Church Road was in that 900 number. And so then we do have a capital outlay request of 455. 400 of that is for the Greenway and Sidewalks projects, 1 pickup truck for the roads foreman, resurfacing the pickleball courts, and then $7,500 for a trailer mounted pressure washing system to go with the beautification laborer. So moving on to Parks and Rec. So we have standard cost of living increase, and bump up there. Overtime's flat. OSI is up 4% to go with the COLA. We're flat on the Collegedale Rec program. We are doing away with the Parks and Rec Foundation money and moving that over to equipment and supplies. This goes hand in hand with that 33% line. We have to date not received any donor money for the Parks and Rec Foundation, which then means that we have to have open meetings and minutes and that sort of thing. And so we're evaluating with the key folks involved if there's a better utilization of our time and certainly our resources rather than in that foundation. And then we are flat on operating supplies, fuel, vehicle parts and repair, and then other repair and maintenance. So it's a 4% bump on the year. All right. So waste and collection. The general raises and COLA there, and rolling our, rolling retention incentive up, flat on overtime. OSI lags again at 8%. Landfill services up 9%. That's based on tonnage that we haul. Green waste recycling's up almost $5,600. Again, that's based on tonnage and this year's projections. Garbage carts are flat. Other operating supplies are flat. Little decrease in vehicle fuel. Vehicle parts and repair up 4%, just under $1,000. Flat on commercial waste pickup. And then we have a capital outlay expense of $248,000. That's $240,000 for the garbage truck and $8,000 for transfer station modifications. The modifications would mainly be performed in-house to ease operations and increase safety. So in the automated garbage truck then allows one of our other automated trucks to become a line truck, and then we will eventually surplus one of the existing trucks. So
Didn't we approve a garbage truck this year?
No, we were through for repair.
A repair, okay. I knew we had something.
This will allow a new one.
Yes, this will be, the truck this is replacing is right at, we had 10 years old when this one comes in. That's about the lifespan to get out of this truck. So it'll still be functioning to be able to be a backup truck. So when we do have one go down, we won't have to have 3 people and a rear loader truck go out. Still on more efficient.
You know, I saw them when that automatic truck was out of service. I personally do not care for our guys being on the back of a garbage truck in today's age. I mean, it's just distracted drivers and
the rate of vehicle strikes in this country on public works puts them in the top 10% most dangerous professions. Debt service expenditures, these are all down, which is great. This is from refunding those bonds that you voted on earlier, which yielded pretty significant savings. Technology fund overview, revenue expenses pretty much flat. Sewer enterprise fund, interest earnings are up pretty good. Again, this is reflection of having significant balance. We do have a $2.55 million transfer from fund balance. This is for the force main project that we brought to you, I guess, last week. And then the stormwater EQ basin that we will bring to you in the future once we get it permitted. We have a slight bump in sewer service charges based on a few more customers. Decrease in sewer tap fees. Again, that's because of Barnsley being closer to built out and Wellesley coming on late next year. That may bump a hair, but we'll just have to see who gets built when. And then we have a pretty significant decrease in debt service from WWTA. That was the Rabbit Valley line that they paid off. So the bulk of theirs is that force main project. And then we come over here to the enterprise fund. Salaries are up 41%. Half of that is the staff engineer position we're requesting. The other is the cost of living adjustment and the slight adjustments based on position. We're flat on overtime. Again, we rolled retention incentive into salaries. OSI is lagging again. Slight decrease in utilities based on what we're spending this year. Other repair and maintenance supplies, slight increase based on where we're actually going to spend at this year. The capital outlay is, again, those two projects we talked about. Collegedale Pump Station, slight decrease. This is just in general operations, as we've had a little bit or a significantly reduced flow through there. So again, the breakdown on the capital outlay is the force main project at 2.5, manhole lighting at 180, the EQ base at 120, and then a truck for inspectors at 40,000.
So this engineer, halftime or whatever?
Half for coming out of sewer fund, half coming out of general fund.
Okay.
So-
And we had none coming out of sewer fund before?
In years past, pardon?
Years ago.
Right, years ago, we had our intern that came out of it. We did away with that position when we were going to bring the staff engineer on last year, and then we wiped that position. So half of their salary will be paid for out of sewer to support the sewer department.
So none of this comes out of any tax dollar. That's the good news.
Correct. This is all user fee paid for. And then disposal and treatment's up 9%. That's based on what Chattanooga charges us. Then we move over to sewer admin, long-term disabilities up. That's just a little bit more accurate projection of where we are. Medical insurance is up. Again, some of that is the additional person. Retirement's up. Again, additional person bump in salaries. We're flat on TML, 8% increase in depreciation. Debt service is down. That was the refunding of the bonds that came in at the same time. Same thing for debt service principal. And then we are flat on transfer to general fund. That's what the sewer fund pays city administration to handle the paperwork. Here we go. So difference between revenues and expenditure is going to yield approximately $17,500 in the surplus, which, as you know, we're required to operate in the black. That should get us there. All right, airport enterprise fund. So grant revenue is projected up 13%. Miscellaneous revenues are flat. Hangar rentals are flat. State maintenance reimbursables are flat. We're up 34% on the sale of aviation fuel. We're up 50% on the sale of jet fuel. Both of those are based on what we're currently projecting. And then we are flat on sale of oil. On the expense side of it, we have, again, the cost of living raise this year and rolling retention incentive plan up. Overtime stays flat. Long-term disability, OSI, again, are lagging. And then we come down to medical insurance and retirement, which some of that's reflective on the cost of living. Life insurance, workers' comp, unemployment, advertising, utilities are projected to remain flat. Telephone's flat, repair and maintenance of the building's flat. We're requesting $10,000 for deferred maintenance. We have a slew of projects that need to be worked on out there, and so we have requested this to get started. This will not cover it in 1 year. We expect this to be a fairly ongoing expense to get our maintenance where it needs to be. Office supplies, other operating supplies, vehicle fuel, vehicle parts and repairs, other parts, tools and repairs, and oil for resale are all remaining flat. And then fuel for resale is up 50%. We can't sell it if we don't buy it. Fuel for resale AV gas, again, is up. It's the sell it to buy it or buy it to sell it. We're flat on other items for resale and insurance. 95.5s, we're up 13%. And then the capital outlay of $40,000 is for a pickup truck. To our knowledge, we can't think of the airport ever getting a new vehicle. They've always been hand-me-downs, and their condition has always reflected it. And so we're asking this year to remedy that. And then we would surplus the truck that they're using. Previously, we requested to surplus a non-running vehicle that they also had. Do you know where we are in selling that non-running vehicle?
I have not listed yet. That's on my list, probably next week to get that.
Okay. So,
Quick question back on airport revenue. Is that revenue, is that hangar rental?
The grant revenues are,
That's a pretty good sized number.
yeah, that's for anything that we can get back in grant money. Now, that money is an expenditure because we have to spend to do.
Well, there's hangar rental before. Okay, I see.
That's it, that's
Okay.
what we get back, that's the 95%.
Right. Good, thank you.
And this year's major project is tree clearing for approaches.
So why is that now an issue?
They've gotten tall enough that TDOT.
Is it on the side of the airport or?
It's off the north end and off the south end. It has been a continuous issue for the last several years, and we've been under a conditional license for the past several years. The mayor and I have constantly had to upgrade what we're going to do and tell them how we are coming on that project. So that it has been a continual process over the last several years.
So on the south end, I'm assuming at the airport entrance is what you're talking about.
Yeah, so.
That is being, I guess, bulldozed down, a lot of that.
Some of that is, but what you're seeing being bulldozed is what's taken care of by TDOT under the Appleton Pike project. But it only goes out so far. Of course, there's trees behind that are still an issue to aircraft. And that encompasses pretty much McKee property on that end. We have been speaking with those folks to work out the details of that. And we've taken years to identify the actual trees that are a problem. That's been an ongoing process. The north end is on the, on the east side of McDonald Road, east and northeast side of McDonald Road. And that encompasses a little bit of city property and then two other property owners on the north end.
So how do we spend money on private citizen or commercial property?
So it comes out of the TDOT airport grants rather than taxpayer money. It's part of the enterprise funds. It'd be similar
So
to.
it's different from if like the general fund was.
Correct. It would be similar when the sewer department buys a sewer easement on private property.
Yeah, the difference is a lot of times I think with a sewer easement, you're actually purchasing the property. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, you're purchasing an easement on the property.
Yeah, rights to use it. And
Right.
here with us, we would own, if we go to that route with the airport, you're basically doing that above the ground level.
Right.
It's the timber rights
Yeah.
versus the ground rights.
Pretty,
Yeah.
kinda. Yeah, it's more like that.
Any other questions on airport? So in summation, revenues versus expenditures, we're projecting just under $34,000 in surplus. I do want to note that with the depreciation ledger entry, that will show negative like happened 2 years ago or 3 years ago. We are projecting almost $34,000 positive cash flow. But we feel it's more important to address some of these maintenance issues than continue to show a ledger positive and keep deferring maintenance. Drug fund, expecting $2,000 in, $1,000 out. And that's it. So, any questions?
So on the sewer, where are we on some of the projects we talked about? Not the big projects, but some of the smaller projects in neighborhoods that's been out there for years.
So, we're not working on those expansions that we talked about. I think I did a presentation on it 2 or 2.5 years ago.
Yep.
We're not doing that. Our focus right now is the existing sewer lines. We're working on repairing those, lining the manholes to get our I&I down. We're still projected 4-ish more years or 5 years to have every manhole lined, give or take. We'd probably be the only municipality locally that could brag about that. So right now we're focusing on maintenance and keeping that I&I down and overflows down. We are focusing on that force main that's 43 years old on a 4-year design life. We did just complete, in the last year, we completed that major trunk line replacement. and installation of the vault and the muffin monster, that sort of thing. Additionally, the federal funds, COVID relief funds, at this point are highly limited. With the one place that we can spend it is sewer. And so once we nail that down and verify that the federal government's not backing off, that's when we'll start having more discussions about expansion versus replacement, what we're allowed to do. I think our meeting with the comptroller is the 9th. They're going to brief us on what it is. That will make us actually one of the few small cities locally that can actually spend the money. Everybody else is just going to let it have to sit, I guess, for 3 years until 2024, and then it goes back to the state. So there's a lot of hope, especially by other municipalities, that they'll loosen up some of the strings on that money.
So the only reason I ask you, and I've talked about this many
Mm-hmm.
times over the years, and I think 2 years ago, you and I had a conversation before we did the presentation. I mean, there's been like 8 main projects that's been out there. Now we've completed some like Heathwood and Central Avenue, I think it is Central something off University, and a few others that we've completed, but I know it's been out there since I've been elected, 20 years. And it just doesn't seem like we are making progress on some of those. And I know you had the feeling that some of them we shouldn't, but I look at it a little differently, because if you do, there is that sewer availability fee that we make money off of, or revenues off of.
The $10 a month.
$10, but if they have a septic failure, then they have to connect, so that's more money that comes into the city from that perspective. So I just really think we need, at some point, we gotta get past we're putting a lot of money into the sewer system. We gotta get to the point of maybe providing people in the community who are having issues. And I'm gonna use my neighborhood as an example. It's been on one of the main list. What?
Over 20 years. It's got to be 15 or 20 years.
But the problem is, some of these people are putting in 2 or 3 times to have their septic dug up. And, I know that I just tell my neighborhood, if you got issues, you can voice it to me, but you really need to come to the commission meetings. And unfortunately, some of this land is just not perking like, even though they're larger lots, I think that we've got at some point really buckle down and say, we've got to do something.
And I think we would like to. Right now, we're trying to get ahead of the maintenance curve to make sure that EPA doesn't come help us. Once we're comfortable in that 4 or 5 year timeline that we really have some of the maintenance items nailed down, we can start going into those. We do get into the cost to run sewer in an existing neighborhood strictly based on design life and user fees. It doesn't pay for itself. And so it then becomes additional items that have to go into that calculus to make it sustainable. And I think we're a couple years out on that conversation, but we've really, over the last probably 7-ish years, there's been a huge push on catching up on the maintenance. If we keep pushing a few more years, we'll be to stasis, and then we start going down the expansion route. Any other questions?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. It looks like we found a way to spend every dime that we're bringing in, and there's no money budgeted for saving, putting away. I understand that to a point, because we've got a pretty good piggy bank right now. But it seems like because we got it, we need to use it is an interesting road to be on. That I think if we really treated this money like we do our own, none of us would live by that plan at all. I don't think you would tell your kids to do that, or your grandkids. It seems like with the huge tax rate we did last year, it'd be really appropriate, I think, to say that we were able to, save some money and make sure we don't have to do that again sometime soon.
So
I'm just,
we're drawing interest on the money, number one. Number two, The deficit spending is for capital projects, one-off projects. Additionally, we're sitting at 48-ish% on fund balance when the state recommends 20 to 30. So essentially we have oversaved for years. So it's basically you saved and saved for years and then that you need to go buy a new truck this year.
So
That's
we've got
one-
of our own money, we got about 5 million.
Pardon?
Of our own money, the city's own money, we got about 5 million.
We have about $11 million in unrestricted funds. 3 of that is bond money that we're paying 1.8%.
That we borrowed.
Correct.
Right. And then part of that's the checking account. And then what we've really got,
The 11 million.
it's not, okay. So there's about 8 million in, but we're having to borrow, we borrowed 3. Okay.
But it's really.
I just think it makes a statement that we need to be cognizant of. And I think apply our own principles to some of this as well.
I thought when somebody asked, it's really not, I thought that like 4 million to 5 million is truly what we had available.
Yeah, that's what I've
That
been
was
told.
before this year's taxes came in 2 months ago. We had a really good jump.
I mean, this is include, you know, the number he's given is conservative when he says 48. We, that's taking out money that we go in and out through the year, which really doesn't happen a lot. We're lucky that
We
we
had-
can do that
So we had a budget surplus in the last 2 months
in the last,
or month.
oh yeah, in the last
We'll
few
probably,
year, I mean, for years.
So we're not gonna have to really do a budget amendment to take money out of our savings account.
Well, now, we have to do that because if you overspend any line item in the budget, you have to do an amendment for that. So that doesn't have anything to do with cash.
but we'll probably be approximately 20% over on revenue this year.
Yeah.
Because we're already 9 or 10% over with 2 months left. Based on last year's budget.
But in other words, in the last month or two, we've had enough cash come in to cover that, probably.
Yes.
Oh, easily.
So COVID didn't affect us as much as we expected.
No, it did not.
My only concern about some of the revenues coming in for like, outside, because we don't have that many large restaurants around here. I
Mhm.
mean, it did hurt from like Cracker Barrel's
Mhm.
perspective, but all the small restaurants, and I'll use Taco Bell as an example, their business boomed.
Mhm.
I mean, so are these numbers projected right?
Yes, because it was, the reason why it says 20% raise is because we dropped it 20% last year. So it's basically,
It's balanced out.
yeah, it's fine. So it's still conservative.
Okay.
I think what, correct me if I'm misunderstood. I think what Commissioner Starr was saying is that what are we putting back in? I know we've got the interest that we can put back into savings that we're not just taking out. You know, so that's, I think is a concern, that we're putting something back in, even though we have a lucrative amount now, because we really haven't spent a whole lot out of what we have saved. So just make sure that we're financially structured and sound.
Well, I think
Am I correct?
I think we're sound financially. That's not the
Yeah, but
issue.
just to add more.
But to think we need to spend all we get, I think that's the issue. And we got 20% over. At that point, to me, it seems like if we do have 20%, we didn't know that. I didn't. Maybe I should have read my literature from somebody. But that's when we ought to do some things we need to do rather than something we want to do. And I think there's a big difference. And I think our
Can
constituents.
you give an example?
I'm sorry?
Can you give an example?
No, I'd rather not right now.
Okay.
I may come see you.
Okay, that
But I
would be
think-
good.
I
I
think
want to
there are,
understand.
I'll give you one.
Okay.
The parking over here across the creek.
Mhm.
I think for all kinds of functions here, we're going to be in real serious trouble real soon. And that's a need to me for our community to see us taking care of our community. And, the wants thing is that's an individual preference. So I'm not going to speak to the wants, but I think that's something that should really drive what we do if we have some extra money. And that's a project that I know will come back and pay us lots of dividends in lots of ways, even though it won't be cash coming in at the gate as they come in the park. But to have a place close for all the kind of events that are going to go on over there, that little place over there has been a huge surprise, I think, to a lot of people. The crowds it generates and 4th of July stuff is going to be there this year. So, but yeah, I think y'all put together a lot of work, and I appreciate that. It's good for us to be able to see it. It'll be good for me to go home and look at it and get back with you.
Where is the city manager's vehicle in this?
Admin.
Okay.
What?
I just overlooked it, I guess.
Gives you the salary stuff.
Chris? You have anything? Okay. Kelly?
I'm happy to, just capital outlay. I see everybody else has one of those. The development code rewrite is our capital outlay. That's a 20-year, the code is over 20 years old. It dates to 1996, and it's based on even earlier zoning philosophy that we don't see in the wild anymore, or shouldn't, and we don't have the tools. So that is our capital outlay request. It is like a bulldozer. It's a dump truck that's going to get you years on that, and that will add value to the city. So I consider that our capital outlay, just from a personal perspective, directly from the department. So I just kind of wanted to make that comparison, that will pay dividends for the next 20 years.
Andrew?
Nothing new to report.
Eric? Bridget? Chief Sapp? Commissioner White?
Nothing.
Commissioner Garber?
Yeah, I say this a lot, but it's really important. I think that I continue to thank everybody that I work with from time to time, get good answers. But Eric continues to help in a lot of ways that maybe other people don't know about. And, all 52 flags are new at the park, Veterans Park, as of a week or so ago, and some of those older poles are not as easy to get the flags up and down, and he sends guys over, and they're very, very helpful, and they actually act like they enjoy it, which is kind of nice too. But it's been really nice to work with them. And Wednesday, he's going to provide a generator so we can put the bronze female up, and she'll be dedicated a week from today. So hope y'all can come join us there, and Eric and his crew continue to do a very nice job.
And that program's 4:00 on Monday?
4:00 in the afternoon, Monday, yes, sir.
Rain or shine?
right?
Rain or shine, yes, sir. Oh, yeah. Thank Bridget for putting the memo out for us.
Bring a chair,
I'm sorry?
bring a chair.
Bring a chair. Unless somebody can sit on your lap, that'd be good. But it's been good.
Commissioner Baker?
I'd just like to say thank you to Chief Snap. I had a neighbor call me Saturday out of the blue and was asking me about which officer came through High Street. I'm going to assume because they were in a Durango, it might have been a supervisor on a shift change or something, I don't know. But she was commenting that he went past her, then he came back, and it could have been you, I don't know. And stopped to talk with her just to see that if she was okay. And she really appreciated that, and it impressed her so much, she had to call me and let me know. So I appreciate whoever it was. Pardon?
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, did very well. And believe me, this is one that I hear from when there's not anything good to say. You know, she keeps a close watch, but it was very, she was very happy.
And that's emblematic of the change in approach that you're rolling out?
Very much.
How about
Yeah.
Phil Douglas?
Very well.
Do you watch golf at all?
Meet
No.
people where they're at.
That's worth knowing about, though.
Well, it made her
He's such a
feel
classy guy.
secure and felt like that there was they had an interest in the neighborhood and her well-being. And she was very
Some of those golfers are not easy
Oh,
to
we
like.
I do get them. But I understand what you're saying. I think so, because it'll spread through.
Vice Mayor?
You know, with the passing of Mike Carter, I failed to mention this, that, you know, Mike has, he's had a tremendous impact to the city. And one of the most recent ones is Lee Highway at Edgemond Road. And, that was a 4-year battle. It wasn't because of Mike that it didn't get done sooner. Of course, that was TDOT and the railroad. But, when he was here, he had the good intent to get that done quickly. And unfortunately, he did not see it completed. They painted the lines and stuff over the weekend, I guess it was.
Yeah.
So it really looks great.
Yeah,
And I wish he
it does,
could
man.
have seen
It's
that.
awesome.
So. And also, last thing on the budget, well, 2 things.
Are you sure?
The paving, do we have like which roads we're gonna pave this year or projects we're gonna work on?
I got a list.
Okay, can you bring that or share that with us in the email or something? That'd be great. And then last, Chief, I always look at my cameras in the morning, because I have these critters that crawl up on my fence. Either it's a raccoon or it's a cat, but it's always interesting for me to see our officers come through with their alley lights on, and it's them. It's a good sign. It's a good feeling for me, knowing that they're out there patrolling. So I do appreciate that. I'm not opposed to really 5 cars. It's just tough to swallow that number. So I think this is a pretty good budget. So.
It's hard for him to swallow anything.
Mayor Lamb?
I know when they do their patrol through my street because their light flashes through my bedroom window. It hits me in the face. I have a question about hunting in the city limits. Can they deer hunt in our city limits?
That would be regulated by TWRA, correct?
Yeah, it would be. I mean, I guess it would depend on where they're deer hunting in the city, but that.
It's on their property, but it's within the city limits and it's not too far from the houses.
There's a minimum distance of,
There's a minimum distance in the ordinance that, because technically you are allowed to shoot within city limits if there's not so many, and I have to look it up and find out where you measure the exact meter distances, but if they're within the confines of the ordinance, and then as far as hunting, that would be something I'd have to research for you through
Okay.
TWRA.
I had an irate citizen call me that lives in the south section of Collegedale.
I believe hunting on your own property is unrestricted by TWRA, but to reflect what they said, there is restriction on how far you can discharge a firearm from another property.
Okay. And I think that both Jack, Hugh, and Wayan got emails from Thrifty Med.
yes.
Is there anything that we can do to help them out with that?
They're in violation of a long-standing city ordinance. It's been in effect well over a decade. So I'm formulating a response.
Okay.
And
Okay.
trying to get the tone correct in writing.
Okay. She talked with me about it.
Yeah.
And that's how she got who to call or to write.
Yeah, that was actually codes enforcement, not PD. And so
Mm-hmm.
Andrew got us all the information this morning.
Okay.
And again, it's a long-standing ordinance that's at least more than a decade old. And so I'm just trying to find the correct tone in an email.
Okay.
And Mayor Lamb, at one point within the last couple of years, the owner of the building that the Thrifty Med is located in had intended to put another sign up to replace one that was taken down, I think by TDOT. We had initial conversations, actually crafted the zoning, the sign ordinance to allow that kind of a sign, and we haven't received anything at this point. And that conversation's maybe 3 years old at this point. For additional signage, now it doesn't address what your email was about, those temporary attention getters, but as far as more significant signage, I did have a discussion quite a while ago with the building's owner.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you so much, all of you, for all the hard work you did on this budget. Appreciate it.
You know the last word? All right. We're adjourned.